Good afternoon, Westwood, and welcome to the Wolverine Report. Joined as always by my co-host, Evan Cardimino. Today we have Michael McGrail, Westwood Media Center intern on the switches, helping out with the technical directing. Also, Marie Fascaldo on social media, and I am Morgan Donahue. Today, folks, we are very excited to have two very special guests when it comes to Norfolk County, when it comes to Tri-Valley League, and it comes to community media. We have the executive directors of both Norwood Community Media and Westwood Community Media, Jack Tolman, Melinda Garfield. Guys, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is a great idea. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. First question I want to ask you guys right off the bat is, in its essence, community media, what does that mean to you guys, and how important is that for the Westwood community and the Norwood community?
You want to go?
Oh, you take it first. Yeah.
I would say community media in my mind is a way that our funding that we get from the cable subscribers can generate news, information. I call it educational and entertainment. So residents of the community and the neighboring communities can learn what's happening in their town.
Really cool. And it's funny, because when I think of community media, like when I went to high school, Norwood Community Media was around for a while. You're on now year 20?
Right.
And going into 21. What I remember is like George Yusevich in the set room. Was it an old Nesson set?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And I remember seeing it. I go, but this is awesome. And Alfred Fincher was at Norwood High at the time, so it was like a really good timing of like the community media and also highlighting such a great athlete like that. Some really cool early memories, and so thankful that it came to Westwood because we have a great story to tell. Not only just when it comes to our history, the local government, the athletics, which we're very passionate about having an athletic podcast. But bringing it to Westwood, and Melinda being the executive director here, I'd love to hear about kind of your story. So Where did you grow up, and how did you end up coming to Westwood Media Center and becoming the executive director?
That's a great story. So I actually grew up in Connecticut, Manchester, Connecticut, and I went to University of Rhode Island, communications major. And I spent probably the first 10 years of my career freelancing around for MTV, a film finance company. I worked for NBC, and I also taught digital media in middle school. Mm-hmm. So I tried it all, which is kind of what they tell you to do until you figure out what you really want to do. And I kind of stumbled into community media in 2011. I actually started in Watertown, a couple months in Watertown, and then I did 5 years at New TV, and that's in Newton. I did the education channel, I taught classes, and then there was a need for alternative revenue, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But as you may or may not know, our budget is solely based on who has cable TV in town. And, in the earlier days, it was flourishing. There was multiple networks, there were multiple cable providers. Now we're really consolidated. Norwood's lucky enough to have their own broadband TV, Norwood Light and Power, I believe. But, Westwood is solely based on Comcast and Verizon. And as we all know, those cable subscribers are dwindling. So back in 2014, when I was at New TV, I started the production services department. So we were kind of like a production house, creating commercials, creating that for-profit revenue that was helping to sustain the program. And in 2016, I became the executive director at Westwood Media Center, built our awesome studio at Purwall Street, and we opened our doors in October of 17. And we've been trying to be the best at what we do ever since.
And one of the other things I want to ask you about, and I know in the past you served as the president of Max Access, and if I need to stop, I can, but you're also just recently joined back on the board. Can you talk a little bit about what Mass Access does and how that's kind of impacting community access stations in the state?
Yeah, so Mass Access, I believe, was formed years ago prior to my entrance into the business, and it serves as the statewide organization that kind of is it's not overseeing, but it's there to help guide and most recently push for legislation for some alternative funding for what we do. So yes, I was the board president, I think from 16 to 19. and I took a nice hiatus. I have a son, and so, life got in the way, but actually I just re-signed onto the board again for this year, just because I think it's super important for the state of community media that we're in to have all hands on deck and really get this legislation passed.
Yeah. Without community media, it's a very scary sight.
Yep.
And for a lot of different reasons, I think transparency when it comes to what's going on in your community. Westwood News Now has saved my bacon so many different times when it comes to like bulk pickup, when it comes to the winter rules, when it comes to parking. Like, it's huge to follow that. And also just being able to understand kind of what's coming up on the ballot, being able to hear candidates. We never had this. It's funny, Charlotte was mentioning the other day, Greg Agnew, I guess, who was part of the inception of Westwood Media Center, was a classmate of mine at Westwood High School. So it's like life comes at you full circle. Jack, I understand Norwood Community Media started 2004, but you were involved at the high school before then. How early, or I guess, when did you start at Norwood High School? And I understand you were teaching. What were some of those classes that you were teaching?
No, I wasn't a teacher. I was hired in '91 by the school department.
Yeah.
To manage. There was a television studio that was built in the late '80s during a renovation of the old Norwood High.
Yeah.
And it was very primitive, very, very primitive, late 80s. And I got hired in '91. And the reason I got hired is George Yusevich, the principal at the time. I had a part-time job at the New England Patriots doing instant replay, and he was the PA announcer. I was the only person he knew that had anything to do with video.
Yeah.
So he called me up. I was working at Kramer Productions at the time, which is here in Norwood. Right. I was there for 5 years learning a little bit of everything. Much smaller company. The smaller it is, the more you learn. Touch everything and wrap cables the right way and from the ground floor up. So that's how I started just to manage. The superintendent at the time, Jim Savage, said, we have a television studio. We need to have somebody who knows how to manage it, or if it's just going to go in disrepair and it's not going to be used. So a lot of thanks I have to Jim Savage to having the foresight to say, look, this stuff is just going to sit here if somebody doesn't use it. So then that's when George called. And so I started there in '91 trying to build a program. There was 2 classroom teachers who did teach TV. This was VHS days and doing editing that way. And then I built it one step at a time. Then digital editing came. We had one Mac. Could only afford one Mac a year. Then another Mac, and just slowly built it. And then Cablevision, it was Adams Russell, Cablevision, now Comcast, said, we're leaving Norwood. We're not going to have our own employees do the local origination programming. So that's when the selectmen approached me, said, you're already running the studio at Norwood High. We don't want a second studio. So this was 20 years ago. They said, would you be willing on a part-time role to try to get this going further so we can have someone cover the selectmen meeting, town meeting, 4th of July parades? That's how that all started.
What an opportunity.
Yeah, and it just happened that way. And this is where we are now, 20 years later.
Yeah. And you've changed lives. I mean, when I was talking to you and also your team before the Norwood game, shout out, Jack, for allowing me to join the Norwood team.
That's great. Yeah, we got to talk about that too. Yeah.
And also kind of gives me a chuckle because Eddie, the Buffalo Hickey, was talking about how George Yusevich used to say a host of tacklers.
Right.
There was a lot of tacklers on the play, and he didn't want to put the binoculars on.
Yeah.
He'd just say a host. But they told me, and you told me, about countless students that have gone on to some of the top universities.
Yep.
And some that are like, you turn the TV on and you can point out they went through Norwood High and they were also part of Norwood Community Media. How special is that to have seen the impact you've had since the inception and where some of these kids are in their careers now?
You know, the older I get and the longer I've been there, it gets more satisfying and rewarding. Yeah. You know, that, and I always tell them, you know, they say, Mr. Tolman, you did this. I said, all we did is just open the door for you, get you interested in something. You know, we said, this is what you can do here. And it's opened up different careers. And out in the hallway at Norwood High, I have like a bulletin board that I call the alumni wall. Yeah. So I have business cards, and with people at CNN and Major League Baseball. And Rob Way is the one I've been talking about. He he's the weekend anchor on Channel 7 now.
Incredible.
And I joked that it was just a little while ago and I use this joke all the time. That was a little while ago, he was at the desk saying, "Good morning, NHS, and we have tater tots for lunch today." So now he's, and there's a picture on the wall where Ryan Begley, who's in the movie business, he's an assistant director. They were doing some reshoots of the movie with Casey Affleck and Matt Damon. I forget the name of that movie that just came.
Something like that. Tattoo? No.
I don't know the name of it.
There was a New England-based movie.
Yeah.
Manchester by the Sea.
Oh, yeah.
No, they robbed. Did they rob? Well, one of
I
the.
know what you're talking about.
Anyway.
Town.
The Town.
No, isn't that? No, it was after that. It was just last
There are a
year.
lot of similar movies.
Anyway, the short version is that they came back to shoot some scenes, and Ryan was on the set with his, headset talking to the director and whatnot. And Rob Way comes from 7 to do a story about, hey, we're shooting a movie in Boston, and looks across into the set and sees his classmate who went to Syracuse. And then Rob went to Emerson, and here they are, and they send a picture, and they say, "We got to send a picture to Mr. Tolman of the two of them taking a picture." Yeah. So it's doors I just say doors are opened, and we show them what they can do, and it might end up in being marketing at the Boston Garden, or it's just something, But the jobs are there; they're still there. Some of them are, they're by themselves up in Portland, Maine, running a news station with all robotic stuff, and there's another one down at Myrtle Beach. So they're all over the place, but they took TV at Norwood High for 4 years. Some of them work part-time for us, and it's just it's rewarding to see careers just because they took a class.
Absolutely.
And you had kids that came back on Thanksgiving break that were helping out during the football game.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah.
And speaking of movies, a little separate, but a couple months ago, I'm watching the movie The Judge. It was filmed in like the Boston area. Some of the scenes were in Dedham. Robert Duvall and Robert Downey Jr. Who do I see sitting behind Robert Duvall? Peter Brown.
Really?
He was an extra.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I will send it to you. We'll put it as part
Okay.
of the clip.
You mentioned obviously the students are rewarding,
Yeah.
seeing them develop and grow, and I would agree with that. I do a lot as part of my job as a production manager with the students, and just watching the growth of them is really rewarding to see because they love what they do. They're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Right.
They're excited to do it. But aside from that, what are some of the other most rewarding parts of your job, and Melinda, for you as well, just as executive directors of community access stations?
That's a good question. I think some of the rewards, I don't know, what the makeup of your staff is a little bit different than ours. We're a little bit smaller, I think, than Norwood. But with that said, one of the most rewarding things is to help train staff members to grow
Yep.
in their careers.
Yeah.
And knowing that they, got their first start or really
Yep.
got their really great hands-on experience, figured out what they want to do, and then did something else. And that's just a part of being a good manager and wanting your people to grow. And so that's really been super rewarding. I also think the community feedback that we've gotten recently with the transparency in which that we can provide with specifically in government meetings. We just started a new quick hit program called In Session. So after almost every single meeting, especially the ones that we cover, the chair comes on a Zoom with us the next day, gives us their top
That's a
5
great idea.
takeaways.
That's great. That's
And-
great.
Breakdown.
Yeah.
And I was at a PTO meeting last night, and one of the school committee members who was doing their little spiel during the PTA meeting played it, and I was
That's-
like,
Yeah,
"Yes,
that's awesome.
This
Yeah.
is what this is here
Yeah,
for." So
right.
I'm constantly trying to innovate and figure out how do you get sometimes a 5-hour meeting, like a planning
Right.
board meeting. How do you get someone to understand what the biggest takeaways were, and if they are interested, okay, go back to the big meeting, find it, and now that we're fully digital, you can do that. You don't have to
Right.
wait for it to premiere on TV anymore. So
I would say one of the things that I enjoy the feedback is after we do an event. Now it could be a sporting event. Matter of fact, just last night the girls hockey team beat King Philip, and it was streamed. The game was live and streamed live, and Isla Wilson is on the team, and she directs the morning news. So after the game, she came in this morning. I said, great game. You scored a goal. They won 2-1. I said, I always ask, did anybody watch it? Anybody check the stream that couldn't go to the game? She said, yeah, my grandfather watched it in Florida. So that's, even if it's one person, that it's a win for that, and whether it's 100 or one person, it's just that that now that game is something they're going to watch again, and that memory's saved, and we provide the conduit for people, especially during COVID, people who couldn't go out, to come and to watch the game because they can't go to the game. So that's another thing, is knowing that we're capturing memories for some of the historical archive for sure.
I get choked up sometimes watching these games because these kids, the effort they put in and how far they go outside their comfort zone to put the team ahead of themselves. I also look at Jack, you're a hockey player, and when we talk with athletes on the podcast, we talk about how important was sports in your life for things like leadership, teamwork, discipline, mental toughness, and a lot of those translate into people's professional lives, and they tap into that. And I also look at these games that are covered. You might have a big meeting 10 years after you graduate high school, and you might be doubting yourself. You might say, I'm not good enough. I don't know if this is for me. But you can put that game on from 10 years ago where you had a big goal, you had a huge win, and remind yourself what you're capable of, and leverage that. And, we had Kathy Delaney Smith on podcast, and she taught us something called act as if. She took the Harvard job when she was probably far less qualified than the other people she went up against, but she acted as if she was the best person for that job. And having that mindset, she was one step closer to it. And each day, it was more at bats, and she ultimately grew that confidence that she was basically desiring to have then. And it was just a really cool perspective from her. But having these archives of these games, to be able to broadcast them outside of just the town, and people can't make it. And when you guys have fantastic announcers. We, over here as well. I'm not tooting
like we
my
do
horn,
too.
but
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
We're passionate.
He's good. Very good.
We're passionate about these sports. So when people are tuning in, they almost feel like they're next door, and I think it is so cool to see where sports are today.
Yeah.
And you were a father to two athletes, Declan and George. How special was that for you to cover their games and also to see them play at the same high school that you played sports for?
Yeah, that's a good point, because what I tried to do is one, make sure, we're fair in the coverage of all the games. And I'll be honest with you, there's probably some times we didn't cover something. I said, Declan's on that team. I just didn't want it to look like that, but I just let it roll naturally, whether it was a little league game or whatnot. But what I enjoy is being, going through the school system since '91. I know how fast those 4 years go. Yeah. Okay, so the NCM team knew, Jack's going to, I'll help set up, get ready. I want to be part of that crew and help them strike and stuff. But when George was playing baseball or hockey, and Declan as well, I would sit down with my wife, Laura, and then I'd watch the game as a parent and as a dad. Yeah. And knowing George is only 20, Declan's 24, but in a few, maybe 10 years, they're going to want to watch that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting there, we're capturing it, we're recording it. It'll age like a nice bottle of wine down the road. But for example, I got an email from not Jordan Davis, his brother. What? Now it's going to bug me. He just maybe it was Jordan. Anyway, he played Norwood Legion in 2010, and he went on our video on demand and said, "Hey, I remember this game against Foxborough, but I can't access the file." Yeah. So I found out that it was still a DVD. So I said, "Well, so the archives are huge for that, where someone wants to relive a special moment, like you said, that's frozen in time."
Yeah, and I coached Westwood hockey for a couple of years. Coached against your son George. He was a terrific hockey player, a defenseman, I believe number 24.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I remember seeing him specifically taking the puck from behind the net, and he was such a gifted skater that he skated right through the neutral zone unabated, almost like Bobby Orr, and took it right to the net. I'm like, who is that kid? I look at it and it says George Tolman. I go, got to be related to Bug and Jack.
Right.
Shout out Bug.
He didn't get this hockey. He didn't get those skills from me. I was borderline.
One thing that I think makes community media stations unique is the amount of content and programming we do. I know at Westwood Media we have a lot of unique shows that I'll let you talk about Melinda in a minute here, but what are some of the unique things you guys are, each of your community access stations are doing, the unique shows, the unique content and programming?
I think
Go for it.
we could be a little different, I think, than a lot of the other places that you may have gone to, where community members will come in and from soup to nuts make their own shows. They'll learn how to do editing, filming. This isn't the place where that has happened. You know, we built it and we wanted them to come and do that, but that model just doesn't work here.
Right.
And so we pivoted, and what we've decided to do is we produce a lot of the programming. We are so lucky to have this podcast. We have another podcast called Boston Sports Nuts. We have a local real estate agent who does a tips every month, like real estate tips. And then Westwood Living, Tom Layden will come in. And we are happy to produce those types of, PSAs and the community chest. We really produce things for all nonprofits in town. Some businesses will do business spotlights, but we kind of pick and choose what our programming is going to be. And we really try to help everybody in town and get their word out, whether they come to us or we just think, you know what, it was really great to go, see what they're doing. So I feel privileged in that we do get to kind of pick and choose what we want to produce. And we've been really helpful, I think, to each town department, to be honest. We do a lot for library, rec, council on aging, just making, and youth and family services, just making sure that all of their programming is being highlighted. And it's super rewarding.
We some of the things that we do that we're proud of is Norwood Digest, which is the first show that we ever did 20 years ago. And matter of fact, Jack McCarthy was in the studio getting ready to shoot a segment with Megan right now. And that is just about a monthly show where it's just, it could be somebody from the library, it could be this right now is the Women's Community Committee who's celebrating their 100th anniversary. So anything happening in town, and it's basically Jack having a conversation with these people. We also started Norwood News, which is a weekly newscast where we just recap. I shouldn't say just, it puts a lot of work into it, as we know, government, sports, and maybe a story in Norwood. And then we have a little fun. We do Living Locals where we profile businesses. And we started a fun thing with Kiki Thaxter, one of our staff producers, where it's Sweet Treats with Keeks. Yeah, so it's just a fun thing. We just, it's a fun thing to mix up our day because we do Board of Health, we do the government meetings, and to throw something in there that the staff is ready to roll up their sleeves and do, that keeps everybody creative. So we do the government, we do the sports, and we do those programs. And that's and we fill in between.
I've been watching those, the Kiki's show where she's gone to different restaurants and getting the dessert, and trying them, and it's fantastic. And then the studio too. I've seen a lot of stuff that you guys have done in the studio, which has been pretty cool. Question for you guys is, just like sports, behind every successful organization it's a successful team.
Right.
Who are a part of NCM, Westwood Media Center, that make it such a special organization? Who are some folks we should give call outs to?
Well, everybody, right? And right now, the entire production staff are graduates of the Norwood High School TV program, which is kind of cool. So Megan knew me as Mr. Tolman when she was in the old high school, and Megan's our station manager, has been there 17 years. Great hard worker and passionate and cares. 3-sport All-Scholastic Hall of Famer. So, and she doesn't like talking about it, and she gets mad when I do.
What year did she graduate?
2003.
So she was a couple years ahead of Coach Clifford.
But they're friends. They play basketball together.
Awesome.
Yeah. Brian Boudreau, another Norwood High. Well, they're all Norwood High grads. Brian Boudreau, Ron Marshalsea, and Kiki Thaxter all have different roles. Ron's been taking a lot of the sports under his wing, and Kiki's been doing some social media. Brian and I work a lot together with the technical end of making sure everything's working. What do we need? What's broken? But he's also very creative as well with some of the Living Locals that he's produced. So, and to wrap it all up is Sarah Sullivan, who's our business manager, who takes care of everything, with payroll, audits, taxes, all that stuff, so we can do our production. She takes care of that.
And here I am very jealous of all those people that you have, because we have four very hardworking people here. So, it's me, I'm the general manager, the payroll,
Right.
the HR, the accounter,
Right.
all of the things. But the exciting part is the creation. And
Right.
so Charlotte Lynch has been with me for 7 years. And together, she is the brains behind a lot of the technical that we do. We love to get geeky and try to figure out how things work. And of course, she's been the face of Westwood News Now for so long, and that it's very special. So very glad that Charlotte has been with me for that long. Evan Cardimino has been here for 2 years now.
2 years in July.
2 years.
Nice.
So about a year and a half. yeah.
Almost. Okay. And Evan is a force, I mean, in terms of making the sports what it is today, teaching, internship program. And then we have we still have TV channels. So people do have
Right.
to schedule TV channels, and we have an HD channel. So Evan takes care of that for me. And then we have Marie Fiscaldo, who is just over a year with us. And since her hiring, we have quadrupled our social media presence.
That's great.
Our
That's
viewership
great.
is unbelievable. She produces reels and just really taps into, what's trending. How do you get your stuff seen? And she redid our website. And so she's just our forward-facing content is just flourished with her as a social media person. So I'm super thankful for this team.
It's amazing. And it's a lot of hats. Even Jack, where you have a larger team and a little bit deeper pockets with the Norwood, Norwood cable. I see them in front of the camera and behind the camera. Is that something that they just want to try new things, or is that kind of a requirement, that you have for?
No, they're comfortable. I wouldn't, if they weren't comfortable being on camera. I'm very rarely on camera. I'll do, it's just, I've got one of those bad Norwood accents. But, we'll all pitch in. It is a team. There's a lot of analogies there. And especially when we do the news, and I tell the high school students, they go live every morning as a news crew. I tell them, the script is your playbook. The script is your sheet music if you're a musician or an athlete. So everybody has to pitch in, and we'll know that if the teleprompter has a little hiccup, then everything puts the brakes on everything. So they know that it's teamwork that gets it all done, and just like our staff, And I know that if anybody in your staff needed to switch a position or do something, everybody would do it. Everybody just pitches in and gets it done.
One thing I want to ask for you, Jack, because, a good chunk of what I do is going out to games and sports, and I know my setup, but I want to kind of dig into what a typical production day for a sports event would be at Norwood Community Media.
Great question. We have different levels, is what I call it, and I could start with hockey, because that's the hockey season right now, and it's very similar to football. We were lucky enough when they were building the skating club of Boston, on University Ave. When I met the president, Doug Zegheim, I told him a few ideas that if you run some cables here in Conduit, we can do some things here. And when I explained to him my vision, he came up to the studio. He said, Jack, I can tell you have a vision and idea. We want to do this. So what that allows us to do is, for example, last night, Megan and Brian worked the game against KP that I mentioned earlier. Our truck is in the shop. We'll get into that a little bit later. The truck is great. Has a lot of bells and whistles to make the broadcast, I say it puts a little frosting on some of the things. But so last night what we did is we have 3 cameras, 3 PTZ robotic cameras that are mounted in the rink. But at center ice, we have a floor box where we can plug in. So we had 1 camera on center ice, 3 cameras that are in a small control room. They give us a small control room that has the controller for the cameras, as well as just a 4-input switcher that can cut between the manned camera on center ice. We have 2 announcers with the headsets. So those 2 announcers can hear themselves. They can see program. We have a camera operator, basically the primary camera. And then in the control room, a senior at Norwood High, Danielle Damati, who wants to go to communications. and Tyler Lovell's a hockey name in North.
Yeah.
Tyler Lovell's going to Curry for communications, and so he zipped over from Milton so he could learn some of that equipment. That's like the middle ground. There's been games where we just put one camera, shoot the game, get the announcers, and now the game's covered, it's live, and they have it. When the truck comes back, we take everything that I just said and connect it to a box that's connected outside. In the truck, that's where we'll have graphics, instant replay, and clips that we can roll in during breaks. And we can put another camera in the corner. So when we use the truck for like football, when Morgan announced, that gives us 2 cameras on the roof, the press box shooting down. We have a camera on the field, and we have a camera on the press box, very similar to camera 2 right here, that's remote controlled, and away we go. So I like to think we can do it with one camera, we can do it with a couple, or we can do it with a good fleet of cameras. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great. And you mentioned, Morgan did a football game with you at, I believe it was the Westwood Norwood game.
Of course it was Westwood, yes.
And
That's the whole point.
Yeah. And the collaboration, that was something that, a year ago, we didn't have Morgan a year ago. So collaboration, I think, is really important. And I think with a lot of the TVL community access stations, especially this year, seeing more of it, not just between Morgan and Ed, but as well as, HCAM doing TVL Sportsnet. And I know Norwood Community Media has sent in clips at the very least. How important do both of you find collaboration between community access stations to be for just community access television in general?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I just reached out to Melinda this week, said, hey, we're going to be doing, Norwood's playing Westwood coming up, and we're going to have Morgan on the mic. And to me, Westwood wins, you're going to want to play that game, right? Westwood loses, maybe not, but the game exists. And somebody might have scored 2 goals, but the game still exists. So we do that a lot. If we're playing, there's a wrestling match tonight. Actually, I don't even know who it is against, but we typically try to reach out to the executive directors and say, hey, we're doing this game. Here's the link if you want to share it. And if you want a copy, let us know.
I think in the world of cord cutting and cable subscribers declining, getting together with other stations is kind of this key forward.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other stations who are actually much smaller than we are. And they only have maybe one person doing sports and government and all that. So having that relationship with them is super important, especially right now.
Yeah, sharing game films is basically what it's like.
You both have been recognized with awards, both personally as well as organizationally. What are some of those awards, and how proud are you of that type of recognition with the hard work you put in?
So we've gotten a few Alliance for Community Media Awards, NATOA Awards, Telly Awards, and personally, I have an Emmy. I'll just say that. And it was a community media production that I got to have an Emmy. So I'm pretty excited about that. But that just makes it all the more reason why we do what we do and that we feel our product is top notch.
Absolutely.
Same. We are members of the Alliance for Community Media Northeast and Alliance for Community Media at the national level. And it's just always rewarding when you submit something that you're proud of for various reasons, and when it's recognized, that's fantastic. NCM, we had, I think there was a stretch where out of 7 or 8 years, we had 5 national station for our budget level. Station of the year is what I call it, and it's great because it's a compilation of our work. It shows our government coverage, our public access uses, what we do, and it shows the scope of everything. That to me is we win that for the town of Norwood. This is who we do it for. So we share that award with them, and some individual programs have won as well, depending on the category. So to get recognized by your peers, I know it's a cliche, but it really is kind of neat. When you get an award.
You left one out, the 2016 Friends of St. Nick, which is, folks at home, this is an award that goes to someone who has done outstanding contributions to the town of Norwood. And it's Mr. or Mrs. Norwood for the year. And Jack won that award in 2016. And I remember being there. I remember Bug was there. And,
Yep.
and I think it might have been like the 25th anniversary.
It was, yeah, yeah.
How cool was that honor?
That was neat. It was the 25th year, and I had been at every Friends of St. Nick except for the first one. And what happened, the very first one, it was all over. And they said, oh, we should have called Jack Tolman to cover this because we can have it. Yeah. So what happened the next year, they reached out, and this was well before NCM, NPA, Norwood Public Access at the time. They said, can you come and cover this event? It was Friday afternoon at Concannon's. And I'm like, well, I'm working. So I reached out to the superintendent, Jim Savage. I said, look at this group. It's a fundraiser, raise money for the Dana-Farber. They want me to go and cover this event for them. I said, but it's during school hours. He said, Jack, this will be our contribution to the event. No problem. You can go. And funny thing is, I go, okay, great. So I tell him I'm coming. I walk into the event. Superintendent's there, every principal. And I'm like, everybody's here in the town of Norwood. And I was like, should I go? Yeah. So I think, doing that, and then it grew with NPA was formed, and we cover with multi-cameras. And I think that it was kind of recognition of all the coverage that we've helped with them. Yeah. And Jim Sweeney, who pulled me aside and said, Jack, and at the time, which makes it personal, is my wife was going through chemo and breast cancer. So they said, look, it's up to you, but, it's your 25th year, and you and Laura, going through this. Is it something that you think that you want us to do? So I went home and talked to Laura, and she said, yeah, let's do it, And so that's made it extra special. Absolutely. And I kind of tailored my speech. And Jack McCarthy of Norwood Digest still talks about this. I didn't know what I was going to talk about, so I made a comparison of when in 1998, when we were honoring this person, this is where the stage of breast cancer treatment was. Mm. And then the next year, so I said, while we were doing this was happening. Mm. And it just came up with the idea, and Jack McCarthy to this day says, Jack, that was a good speech. I still remember that. Yeah.
I was there, and she was in the midst of
the
battle.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, the proceeds of the Friends of St. Nick go to Dana-Farber.
Yep.
And they've fundraised over $500,000 or $500,000 for cancer research at Dana-Farber. That was incredible. I understand your wife's Norwood as well.
Yep.
So adding to the statistics of Norwood.
That is correct. That is correct.
Yep. We had Coach Clifford on.
Yeah.
She said her parents, Norwood on Norwood. But a special, obviously a special place. One question I have for you guys is...
Can I interrupt? I just thought of this. If you remember the video and the staff, what they did for the video, they'll play a video before I speak. They did a parody video of me, and they imitated me. They all imitated me and my mannerisms, my hyperness and interrupting. And I'm sitting there going, oh, they really got me good. Yeah. And it was hilarious. Cool. They basically made fun of me, but in a fun way that was like, that was good.
Oh, that just happened the other day.
I think you made it when that happens.
Marie did it to me.
Yes, she
did. Video of me. Yeah. And, she got me during my low points.
Okay.
But, hey, you got to be able to laugh at yourself.
Right.
It's a great form of leadership.
Yep.
And shout out to you, Jack, too. My father had gotten the award, I think, early in the 2000s. And the videos are incredible. You went all the way down to Rhode Island.
That was cool.
You went down to go interview Governor Kacheri.
That I tell that story. So, I mean, I'll relay this. So Morgan's Uncle Bob, who's, passed away, great guy, said, hey, we're going to do a video. I do the video every year. How are we going to tell the story? And, I knew he, great hockey player, class president. Was he class president? Or,
yeah.
All right. And then off to Brown and, great hockey career. And he said, what I want to do is I want to interview his college roommate. I'm like, okay, that's cool. All right. And I said, well, where is he? He says, well, we got to go to the governor's office in Rhode Island. I go, what? He goes, yeah, the governor of Rhode Island was my brother's roommate in college. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
So down we go. We didn't tell anybody this. We didn't tell anybody. We go down, and I remember going to the State House building, and the if my memory's right, the Rhode Island State Troopers kind of look like the Mounties.
They do.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
and they're all standing there. I'm like, what is this?
Intimidating.
Yeah, right. I'm like, so I'm walking in with my camera and I pass all these guys and we open the door. It's a real formal office, but the coolest thing, as soon as he saw your Uncle Bob, he wasn't the governor.
Yeah.
He was a college roommate. Hey, what's going on? I'm like, it was cool. Yeah. And so we didn't tell anybody until the video was playing at Concannon's, and we just cut to like a zoom in of the State House. I'm like, what's going on? And then it's the governor.
I've told this story to Evan, and I've told it on the podcast, and I want kind of you to verify as well. Where my uncle, he passed away like right at the beginning of COVID, and I would go in to see him in the hospital. He was a very close friend of mine, and he got the tough news of that. It's not going to be long. The 3 days leading up to the day he passed, he had Friar Folan in there, Bob Clifford in there, some of his high school teammates, and all they talked about was their memories playing hockey together at Norwood and how special that was.
Yeah.
And that was probably part of the reason why I wanted to get involved with, doing some games, is to be able to add to these memories for these kids.
Yeah.
Can you piggyback off of, I guess maybe the town of Norwood and just sports in general, but dating back to like the 60s and Norwood 70s, how special sports were to the athletes. And then even today's, Westwood and Norwood, how special these bonds are, which are created on the athletic fields where, there's some great memories and they're still talking about it, in some, dire circumstances, but also many, many, many years later.
I think my opinion is high school is frozen in time for everybody.
Yeah.
It was
It's a great point.
a great memory of those years. And whether it's sports, but it could be the marching band, it could be student council. That's something that you were involved in, the drama program, anything like that, a club activity. Sports is a lot of teamwork and a lot of practice, and and the drama and marching band do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So to me, that stuff is frozen in time, along with your teachers. Everybody who had teachers, Absolutely. The teachers are frozen in time, and their memories are frozen in time. Everybody, it's like these are the years. Yeah. So I think to go back and relive that, and we do it we have events that we can play.
Yeah.
So we actually have that. Matter of fact, the 1984 class of Norwood High had a reunion. Tom Shalhoub is a New York comic, and he does something on Fox. Do you know Tom?
No.
If you look, he's friends with all those comics, and he's actually friends with Jimmy Fallon. Oh. And they came out as the Barbershop Quartet, singing with Justin Timberlake.
Yeah.
At his high school senior variety show in 1984, he sang in a Barbershop Quartet.
No way.
He reached out to me, and we have it on VHS.
Oh, wow.
So he's coming up from Connecticut, going to the old Colonial, wants to have a copy of that on a flash drive, just like I gave you. And he said, I want to have a copy. I don't want the video on demand or whatever. I want it. So what we did, file this one, is that night on Norwood Community Media, we rebroadcasted that at 9 o'clock. And I went to the OCC and I told the bartenders, put our channel on at 9 o'clock. And at the reunion, they're watching that. So it's memories, sports as well, but it's memories that people like to share and bottle up and save. And if we have them, that's huge. That's gold.
Yeah. Which kind of leads me to a unique story that you told me a while back is Norwood has a new high school now, and you were helping kind of move out of the old high school and the new high school, and you came across some old footage.
Yeah.
That was historical footage. It also turned into a really special project. Tell us a little bit about that. This is a really cool story.
I'll try to keep it short. Short version is there was an old AV closet up at Norwood High School that had the AV bulbs, and it had old films and overhead projectors, cassette decks. And I saw these cans of films, and they looked just like the game films that the football teams would have, metal canisters. And I saw one that said Italy and G. Lee, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. I threaded it up, and I said, I may as well see what this is. And the projector was in there, and I shoot on the wall, and I see like from the point of view of a plane flying, bombing bridges and trains. I'm like,
What?
this must be from social studies class or something from that somebody left behind, but I didn't know what it was. So I was talking to my father-in-law. I said, I found this film. Do you know anybody named G. Lee that, something to do with the war? He goes, Colonel George Lee? Everybody knew who he was back then, but I didn't know who he was. So I called Teddy Mulvihill, who was our veterans agent, the next day, and he watched it. He goes, Jack, these are the gun films for the camera underneath the P-47 plane that when they press the trigger, it records. So when they go back to headquarters, they can see what they did. He said, that's what these are.
Yeah.
So we reached out to the Lee family, and those films were lost. They didn't know where they were.
Probably,
So
16 years.
long time.
Yeah.
And we think that somebody in the Lee family brought them for show and tell up at the high school and left them behind. So we transferred them, and I did some research. George Lee died in the 50s. I reached out to somebody in his one of his co-pilots, and we turned it into like a History Channel documentary. And the way the media works is kind of cool. Is we did that and we raised money for the George Lee Bridge, which is in the middle of Norwood on Manhattan Street. You'll see the signs, and so we raised money by having a premiere. But the local paper heard about it and did a story that these films were found. Then Channel 4 saw it in the paper, came in and did a news story. Then because Channel 4 did it, the Boston Globe, and they all basically follow the idea. And that's how it got into the Boston Globe.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was just a random thing.
Incredible. And not only that, folks, check that out. If and it should be on NCM, right?
Yeah.
You can search it. Richie Hebner, you did a special on him. Outstanding.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Was
Yeah,
great too.
yeah, yeah.
So just some fantastic stuff you put together.
And those are fun to do because people like to talk about people they know. Yeah. I do the Hall of Fame videos for the high school. So if I ask somebody, hey, your buddy's going to the Hall of Fame, they're like, when do you need me? Just like the memories. You don't have to struggle to get people to talk about those days.
Going back to community access for a second, what are some of the biggest challenges in your job?
Funding.
Yeah, right. That's true. Yeah.
Funding. Because you want to be everywhere. You want to cover every single game.
Right.
You want to be able to deliver what every resident wants. But we can't because we don't have the staff or the right equipment to do what you want to do. And, it's continuously dwindling. So, our jobs have more recently been fundraising. I think that becomes a huge part of what executive directors have to think about now from access stations. But funding is the biggest problem.
And it's people's viewing habits have changed, with social media and the phone. So cable TV, has a lot of competition now. And, that's our funding is coming from the cable companies. So we're really, our mission statement and our the reason we exist is because they give us money. We put content on the channels, but we now use social media to really kind of almost like as a way to keep our brand out there and say, hey, here's a little reel of a Westwood event. We have the whole game if you want to watch it on video on demand. So
you have to meet people where they are right now.
Exactly. Right.
And for those at home that want to help out, what can they do to donate and support Norwood Community Media Westwood Media Center?
We don't have anything in place to. We've had a few sponsorships. I'd like to explore that a little bit more, and I know a lot of communities do that. Some of the ideas that I've always had is like, today's football game is brought to you by Dempsey Insurance, and we've done some of that. And there's, I think, a lot to be said about that kind of fundraising, where you can get, this replay brought to you by so and so, and in Norwood anyway. I don't know how yet, but one of these days I want to be able to go to Moderna. Big,
right down the street.
Right, and we've never actually had anybody on Norwood Community Media with a lower third that said Moderna. I don't know. I've reached out to the town manager. I've reached out. I haven't done a cold call, but a company like that is really invested in the community now by building. may want to give back to the community
Yeah.
and be like a annual sponsor, you know, gold sponsor, silver sponsor,
Yeah.
any kind of things that we've seen
Yeah.
things too like that.
Kind of like what Fidelity does for the Boston Pops.
Yeah.
Like the whole season.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we got
Yep.
pretty lucky this year with Arch Orthodontics and Norwood, Cadillac of Norwood.
Great.
They are both sponsors of all of our sports broadcasts. So we've definitely been doing that. And then we recently added a donate button on our website, which is huge. And we do a lot of production services. I would say the bulk of our alternative revenue comes with for-profit type of work that people want.
So folks, check it out on the website if you want to support the cause. WestwoodMediaCenter.com. Donate.
WestwoodMediaCenter.tv.
.tv. Apologies. And then soon to come at some point for Norwood Community Media. But we've gotten a lot of great feedback from parents. And it was similar to what you said, where greater family members aren't always in the Westwood area. Some are, vacationing. Some are just living in another state. And to be able to have that connection live too,
Right.
where they're on the family text thread and be
Right.
like, my gosh, they scored a goal.
Right.
Westwood beat Hopkinton this year in soccer, and Hopkinton hadn't lost a game in 2 years.
Wow.
And it felt like the Russians,
Yeah.
And Westwood beat them 3-1. And it's fun sometimes when you do a live game and you look at the views, and it starts off, and then all of a sudden it spikes.
Yep.
And people are sending it to their friends, they're sending it, and it's just really cool because it brought people together. And one thing I want to talk about too is, in my opinion, there is nothing that brings people with different backgrounds and diversity together in a town better than community media. When you go to a sports game, Evan and I were talking about this last night, you could have all different types of backgrounds, politically, ages, everything. They're all rooting for the same team.
Right.
And that's something that is a great distraction sometimes from, life. How special is that, where you can be able to get everyone on the same team, supporting the town, having town pride too, I think is a big thing about media, is highlighting stuff you didn't know about that now we're getting behind. So national championship on Monday for Notre Dame and Ohio State. Joe Vinci, true freshman long snapper. So, Tom had a podcast with that. So for us to be able to understand he's in the game, who he is, the circumstances, the whole town's rooting for him. How special is it to have where town media is able to have that type of effect on being able to bring people together?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I don't know too much about Vinci.
Yeah.
But I heard about it and I said, this is crazy. This is great. I told my 91-year-old father-in-law, I said, hey, put the game on. There's a kid from Westwood snapping the ball. I just think it's cool. And that somebody that, is right next, I call Westwood right next door. And here he is on national TV. I'm like, okay, I'm watching him, looking him up. And I don't know too much about it, but I found it was fascinating.
Absolutely.
Because he's a neighbor.
His father was a Westwood High grad, 98.
I said, that's great.
And his brother was a captain of the team. So we would do games, and Mario would have a big play, and we'd say, Joe Vinci checking in, watching from South Bend, Indiana. And he would confirm, and he would be so proud of his brother.
Yeah, the shout-outs are great.
How cool is that with community media where he's getting prepared for, Ohio State.
Right.
And Westwood's playing Norwood or Hopkinton, a TVL team, and he's able to watch those games.
I think everybody has one hometown. You have your hometown. And a quick story, Alfred Fincher, who played at Norwood High, went to UConn, played 5 years in the NFL, and he came back and gave a couple speeches. And he said to the football team, he said, when I was in the locker room, nobody talked about what college they went to. They always wanted to say that their high school would beat your high school. They talked about the high school. That's what they said. So, I mean, you have one hometown, you have one high school, you have one community. And I think, I think I'll talk to the Westwood viewers here. I mean, somebody with Melinda's background, well-rounded, and the fact that you were with New TV, which is a big operation, you learn a little bit of what to do, what not to do, and your own personal slant on it. To have that here in Westwood is huge. And Westwood is lucky to have someone with your caliber, and to see you volunteering your time. You're doing what we all want. That every town has somebody that, hey, come on down, use our stuff and talk about the town.
Yeah.
And you got the passion, you got the fire, you know, and helping out. You're learning a lot right now and every day,
Yeah.
you know, some trick or some whatnot. But I just think that I think the Westwood viewers, you know, should be proud, you know, of what's going on here right now. I walk in here and go, this is cool, you know, and I might copy a couple ideas, and that's how it works, you know. And I think community media is someone said this to us, and Megan has, I keep saying Megan, and she's our station manager that I mentioned earlier, but I know her and Melinda are very friendly. We say community is our middle name, Norwood Community Media.
Yeah.
She heard that, and now we run with that because it really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a little, just wanted to say that.
There's so many Westwood and Norwood connections too. You guys do a great job when covering the Westwood boys and girls game, typically like a doubleheader,
Right.
at Norwood, and they always do a good job of going through the connections. You know, Brian Whalen, Matt
Yep.
Gillis,
Yep.
Coach Clifford, Kevin McDonald, Michelle Hebner, who's Richie Hebner's niece. One of the special connections between Norwood and Westwood was Jackie McMullen, who's probably one of our most prestigious Westwood High School moms, one of the greatest sports writers, journalists ever. And she came through Westwood High School, graduated in 1978. She got her start with the Daily News Transcript. She was a little upset with that the girls' sports weren't getting covered. So she reached out to Sales Wall, and she said, "Hey, you know, we'd love to see more coverage of the you know, the girls' sports." And Sales said, "I'd love to. I just don't have. I'm a one-person shop. Like, if you want to cover the sports, I'll print it. If it sucks, I won't print it." You know, in true Sales fashion, he's got the cigar in his mouth and all that.
Yeah.
So she hand wrote these articles. She would drop them off at the principal, like the secretary kind of area of the high school. Sales would come, pick them up, and then print it. And that's how she got her start, was at the Daily News Transcript before going to UNH. But, you know, Sales, every time I hear about Norwood sports, you always hear about Sales Wall. His brother also, I guess, was baseball coach.
Yep, Pete.
How special was a guy like him in the Norwood community and what, you know, he provided? And do you also see, did you see the impact that he had on the community, and see that you have kind of a similar impact as well when it comes to highlighting these athletes, telling that story, archiving that story? Wanted to kind of get your feedback on.
Yeah, Frank was one of a kind. He's a throwback journalist, local sports reporter, slick back hair, and had the notebook, you know,
Cigar in the mouth.
Cigar in the mouth, and it was just such a classic. He was kind of like, you know, just such a throwback. He had a column called Sports Slants, and anybody, you know, from like about 25 years or even longer, he purposely would put names in the paper. So you know, the athletes could see their names in print, and that's kind of gone now. I think that what we do is very similar by capturing the athletes, getting their name on TV, and so they say, "Oh, they said my name on Westwood Media. They said my name on Norwood Community Media." Yeah, so I think there's the old throwback of the newspaper is somewhat. There's a lot of that what we're doing here is similar.
Big time.
And Frank Wall was, everybody knew who he was. One time I was golfing with a friend of mine out in where was I? Out I don't know, maybe past Holliston, Hopkinton. I forget the course. And I look at this guy, and I go, this guy looks familiar. And it was Lee Montville, who's a Hall of Fame writer for the Boston Globe and an author. And he's out there, and he had to join our foursome. And I said, "You Lee Montville?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, you wrote for the Globe?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Where you guys from?" We go, "Norwood." He goes, "You know Frank Wall?" I go, "How do you know him?" He goes, "Everybody. He was the classic local hometown reporter." Yeah. So here's a writer for sports, for the Globe, Sports Illustrated, and an author knew who Frank Wall was.
Incredible, larger than life. And you can check out the special that Norwood Community Media did on Frank Wall on the website, and it was fantastic. My dad was a part of it, talking about Little League, you know, the Braves or something.
Yeah.
Last question for you guys: if you can predict the future, what the future looks like for community media, positive, negative, maybe some of the battles that are ahead. What do you envision?
Oh, geez, I
We
haven't
may have
thought of
different
that.
visions.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that. You go
Well,
first.
there's a
Yeah.
huge difference
Yeah.
between where your studio is located and where ours is.
Right.
So because
That's true.
you're already in the high school, you
Right.
already are integrated with all the students, you teach classes.
Right.
We are in a standalone building
Yeah.
that is very expensive. And so I think our future looks a little bit different, possibly. We are actively trying to figure out where we're going to move our studio, because this just isn't sustainable. We love it. It's fantastic, but it's off the beaten path and kind of hard to get to.
Yeah.
And we want to be where the people are. So that makes the most sense to me, is that you'll see a difference in location, and it has to happen soon. And then honestly, I think, there's going to be some big shakeups at the federal level. The FCC is a different beast with this administration. And, we may see a reclassification of cable in our tenure.
Right.
And that would mean that they wouldn't have to pay for rights of way use. So if our funding, it might not be just a dry up, it may be a cliff
Right.
that we fall down. And so, we're preparing for that. I think you'll see a lot of what I envision, some of the nonprofits turning into municipal departments, possibly.
Yep.
Maybe they're turning into school, departments themselves. But I think we all need to actively think about how are we going to become, get into town budget.
Yeah.
And save what we get to do.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Really, we exist because of the funding.
Yeah.
And the funding's coming from cable TV, and cable TV is changing.
Mm.
So we can't really forecast, but we have to plan for all different options to see what is going to happen. And the thing is, as you mentioned earlier on the show, that community media is really, it's turning into one of the last voices of the community.
Yeah.
So if you want to know what happened at a government meeting, if you want to know town meeting, if you want to know who won a game,
Yeah.
you can't read it anywhere, and you might get some now with a post on social media, but you won't have, the in-depth coverage.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
It's a sad sight. Community media is the backbone of town democracy.
Yeah.
And just town pride. There's a whole list that is that will go on and on and on. But this is a great episode to get make people aware.
Right.
And to also, these stories we're talking about, span decades, and the impact we're talking about is everlasting of what community has provided to people's lives and what it will provide for the future. We're very thankful, to have both you guys on to talk about it.
This was great. This
It's a
is
lot
great.
of fun.
This
A lot
is
of good
great, yeah.
stories, and might have to do an episode 2 because there's probably 10 other stories I had
Yeah.
ready to go. But guys, thank you so much for joining us, the Wolverine Report, and very thankful for the time.
Yeah. Let's give a plug. So Norwood's going to be playing Westwood hockey, boys hockey, and we'll have Morgan on the mic with Mark Hoover calling the game. And I think that is such a cool thing that we're starting, where we join together, share announcers, and share the outcome, win, lose, or draw, whatever happens, happens. But the game's covered, and it's kind of, hey, it's like a crossover of two communities.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because the communities, when you come together like that, we're on the same team.
Right.
We're all rooting for safe,
Yeah.
safety of the athletes, a good game,
Yeah.
but just entertainment.
Right.
When you're behind the mic, you just want the people who are viewing it to enjoy, that, and it's fun. Being with Eddie, the Buffalo Hickey legend, for the football game, and Mark Hoover, met him. He was doing the PA during the football game. Looking forward to doing that. I was a Westwood player myself. My dad was a Norwood player, so it's an interesting dynamic, family-wise. But I'm very thankful to you and the opportunity to do that and bring some two amazing organizations together.
Great.
But folks, thank you for tuning in to the Wolverine Report. Looking forward to seeing you all on the next one.